let's pop off right now. We got to get started.
We got to go.
Let's go. Let's go. Let's get the people in the chat. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hit and Hustle from OurSportsDaily.com. I'm your host, Greg Flammang, and with me, as always, is Jamie Uyeyama, Mr. Jamie University. It is Thursday, December 7th, and we've got a mailbag show for you today. It's been a little bit since we've done a mailbag show. There's been a lot of news that we knew would take up most of our show time, but it's not as breaking. And there's not as many topical things, although we will have a new segment at the beginning of this show. But so we put out the bat signal for the ISD customers on the message board, and so we've got some good questions. So it's going to be a really fun show today. Thank you everyone for tuning in. If this is your first time catching us, or if you have caught us before and you haven't done so yet, please subscribe to our show. Please like this show. Please hit the notification bell so you know whatever it is we are going live. Links to our podcast are in the description below. And if you are a podcast listener, please rate 5 stars. So that allows the show to kind of grow and get more people listening to us, and allows other people to find our show who haven't done so already. Jamie, how are you doing? We've had a little break in the news. How are things for you, and how are you feeling today?
I'm feeling great. I mean, it's still busy. It's very busy time of year. Busy for content. Obviously, there's busy visits going on for transfer portal stuff right now, which I think is exciting. I'm excited about it. I think I'm excited about all the possibilities. Every day, there's somebody. It doesn't matter what time of the day, there's someone that pops in the portal that you're like, okay. And it's not even necessarily that they're a Notre Dame target, but maybe, there's certainly been a lot of guys that Notre Dame's going to play next year and that are head to other things. And maybe some of these guys are going to go to some of the schools that Notre Dame's going to play to. So, there's a lot going on with it. It's so funny because recruiting kind of gets put on the back burner. Because Notre Dame's class has pretty much been what it's been for a long time, and the bowl game really gets put on the back burner too, especially because it's not 100% certain which guys aren't playing it, which is kind of weird. Why some guy I kind of figured that more of the guys would have announced that, hey, I'm not playing or I'm going to the league or whatever, but maybe some guys are actually thinking about it. I don't know. It'll be interesting. But Oregon State obviously is going to missing a lot of guys, so that'll be
they've got a lot of portal stuff going on right now, which is difficult, right? And I think Notre Dame's gonna. It's not a big secret at this point. There's going to be some key players not playing in the bowl game, so there's going to be a lot in flux. It's award season, so we just saw Xavier Watts win the Nagurski for the Defensive Player of the Year. I think it was it Lombardi yesterday for Joe Alt. He was a finalist. He did not win.
Yeah.
The defensive end from UCLA won that, and then JD Bertrand was up for an award as well, and he was wearing a pretty spiffy ESQ suit. Yeah, it was a custom fit. He had a JD Bertrand kind of photo of himself inside his suit, which looked good. So ESQ obviously did him right in that way, and they're looking to do you right as well for this holiday season. There's no better gift for your husband, your father, your brother, your son, nephew, whoever it may be, for ESQ's bamboo dress shirt, which you've seen on all your favorite Notre Dame players and coaches. It's the world's most comfortable dress shirt made of sustainable bamboo fibers. The bamboo shirt is naturally odor resistant, wrinkle resistant, and even machine washable. It's also 3 degrees cooler than cotton, so you can sweat it out watching the games for the remainder of the season. When we say games, we're talking Notre Dame women's basketball, Jamie. We're talking men's basketball. Another big win for the ladies last night. So you didn't have to sweat that one out, but there's going to be some big games later on. So get ahead of the holiday season. You use ISD 25 to get 25% off your online purchase at esqclothing.com, or visit God at Chicago showroom to get your perfect custom fit. Jamie, let's get to some news before we get to the questions here. I believe it was after our show on Tuesday. These things kind of all blend together, but I believe it was after our show that Kris Mitchell formally committed to Notre Dame out of the portal, out of Florida International University, led Florida International in catches with 64, over 1,100 yards receiving, and just under 10 touchdowns. Pretty important prospect, I think, for Notre Dame in helping their wide receiver room. Now that he's formally in full, Jamie, let's just kind of get back into what that means for the wide receiver room. Where do you see him fitting in? Do you have a comp for him from a former player? I have one in mind, but I want to know where you're going with this.
I'm not going to say my comp because people won't like it. People aren't going to like it, so I'm not going to say it. I'll let you go first, and then maybe I'll give mine, because people aren't going to like it because I give comps and people just think that it's like, oh, great, because it's like they have bad memories of something. I'm like, I meant the good parts, but whatever. Like, but I really like him. He's fast. He's fast. Yeah. He adds that element of speed that they didn't have at the field receiver position, right? Which is why we mentioned on Tuesday that he's probably would have started over Rico Flores. I believe that, there's a very good chance that he would have won the job. And I think he had more polish as a receiver, as he should. He's going to be a 6th-year player. Rico Flores is going to be a 2nd-year player, right? Mm-hmm. So he's quite a bit faster than Rico Flores, right? Like, he's a reported 4.4 guy. He ran a sub 1,100 meters when he was a high school junior, and he's big plays at FIU. One of the best, 4th in PFF deep ball grades last season. Really took a big jump. Like, he added a lot of weight and got a lot stronger. So I think too, like, you think about someone like Thomas Harper, who obviously played a different position, but he was a guy who was like, man, this guy's pretty small at Oklahoma State. And it's not like he grew inches wise, but you could tell he got bigger. He got quite a bit bigger and stronger at Notre Dame. And you hope that's like something that would happen with Mitchell as well too, because obviously Notre Dame's going to have better programs in place in terms of strength and conditioning and nutrition and all of that than FIU. So that's something that's, I think it's going to be interesting to watch, to see like what he can do in terms of like, everyone thinks like a 6th-year guy is done, in terms of, physically getting stronger. And that's just not the case. Obviously the guys in the NFL get bigger and stronger still.
100%.
So that, I think that's going to be really interesting to watch. I think bare minimum, he can be a big play threat guy, a guy that you use to target, to throw the deep ball to. And really, he's got juice after the catch too. He's got the most yards in the history of Florida International in a single season. So more than T.Y. Hilton, who obviously became a great player in the NFL. And I just think that he's someone that they needed from his skill set. So automatically, that's a huge win for Notre Dame.
Yeah. I think my comp. So I'll give you my comp. And it's actually not even mine. Someone who I've been chatting with lately, he said like a better Chris Brown, and I thought that was good. Like, not like they're not neither as bigger guys. Chris Brown was taller. I think he was 6'2", 6'3", and Kris Mitchell's more like 6'1". But just like, they're strong, but they're slight, right? They're not thick guys. And I think that Chris Brown, like, as he got into being a senior, especially at Notre Dame, like, I think he could be like that similar type of player. I think the difference is, and he says better Chris Brown, and I agree, because Kris Mitchell's used to being the guy on his team, right? Like, when you get 100 targets, you're like, every single route you run is like, they could throw it to me, there isn't really a play called where it's like, oh, we're not going to Kris Mitchell here, like, he could always get the ball. And I think that kind of responsibility is important, and experience in a wide receiver, something that the room doesn't have, right? And they weren't going to have, regardless of if everyone stayed, they weren't going to have that, right? So it's a great addition to the wide receiver room, regardless of the transfers. And Danner Curry asked a question here about Jamie, give me 2 or 3 things that Parker can do to improve the vertical passing game, i.e. wide receiver, pre-snap motion, and other ideas you have. I think one thing you do to improve it is add a player like Kris Mitchell, because he's a guy where you can call a vertical play, you can call a post or whatever, and you don't have to necessarily scheme it open. There's a difference between, some people being open, and some people it's like, hey, he has a little bit of a step or he has a little bit of leverage here and I can see that. I'm going to give him a shot because he knows how to win in that kind of situation. That's how you help a vertical passing game, just by adding a player like this, right? Because how many times what did you see out there? It's like Tobias could get open, right? But if he wasn't wide open, then Sam Hartman's a little bit hesitant to throw that. I'm not going to throw you the 50-50. Like, I'm not going to throw a ball where it's like you got to fight for it. Same thing with Rico Flores. Like, he gave Rico Flores a chance against Louisville, didn't come down with it, got intercepted. They gave him a chance against Ohio State, didn't come down with it, right? Chris Tyree, same thing against Louisville, right? Like, threw him a slot fade and it ended up not being caught. So just adding a player like this really helps to that. And I think that more than pre-snap motion or anything else.
Yeah,
I
more
just
than
think
scheming
adding
it up.
talent. Yeah, adding talent there is the most important thing.
I 100% agree with that. And also, I'll add that my guy was Chris Brown too. But I was just like, people just don't like, it's like, because Chris Brown's not a star, people just like hate it. It's like, well, no, Chris Brown's a pretty good player. And, the thing is, if he becomes like senior year Chris Brown, I mean, although Chris Brown played the boundary, he probably was better suited to the field. But I think that
Will Fuller was there.
Yeah. And I think if he has a Chris Brown type of senior year, that's a good year. Like, that's Notre Dame desperately needs someone to have that.
Yeah.
They could use that. Right. And it's not even to say that like Mitchell's going to be a wide receiver one. He just has to be a guy who can bring in a big play and contribute and just do what you do. Like, probably the best case scenario is that like Jaden Greathouse becomes wide receiver one or something like that. Like, that is probably the best case scenario or Jaden Thomas or whatever. One of those guys probably, right, is probably the best case scenario. But I think that the fact that this guy has been a wide receiver one, he's the guy that they went to like on third downs. He had 18 catches on third downs. Like, that's a lot of catches on third downs. They targeted him a lot. He was the guy that they want to move the chains. I mean, he had 100 targets overall, right? Like, that's a ton of targets. And I just really think, to back to your point about the personnel part of it, is when Notre Dame played any corners, any team that had legit corners, like legit NFL corners, guys who could really run, the vertical passing game was dead on the outside. It just was. And it's because they didn't have the speed on the outside. That's 100% what it was. Like, they didn't have anybody who could really test somebody. And that's why you saw corners play off and really sit on routes and just say, okay, I dare you to try to run by me. And they couldn't. Like, Rico Flores doesn't have the speed to just run by someone. He's not that guy. That's not his game. So, I mean, and really too, they didn't have anyone on the boundary who could do that either. So because of that, they were always dead in the water. And that really limits what your playbook is in those situations. So everyone was saying, why aren't they more explosive? They're so explosive against these bad teams. Yeah, because those corners aren't the same level of corners.
Right.
And even if you look at Tobias getting that, scoring on that post against Kalen Carson, the corner from Wake, well, that is his biggest thing, where it was like, does this guy have the vertical speed to run with someone who can test him deep? Mm-hmm. So, and they tested him and he caught flat-footed and boom, he got beat. Right. So that's kind of the biggest issue for them, is they didn't have that. And they certainly had guys like that in the slot, but not enough outside. And so now they have somebody outside that it's like going to be that. And then, like, Cam Williams, Logan Saldate, they can be those guys hopefully down the road. And that's kind of, what you're looking for.
Right. And so then they can learn from someone like
Yeah.
Kris Mitchell. It's a perfect situation for them. John Erickson's asking about a strength coach, and the A Stack brought it up. And we have a question about it. So I'll just get it to it right now. Sneaky Pete 74 asks, any updates on search for a strength and conditioning coach? You had heard a little bit about this. We don't want to give away too much because we just don't. But you had heard a little bit about this, so why don't you share that intel, and then we'll move on with some other things.
Yeah, I heard that there was someone from, I'll just say like a very prominent strength and conditioning coach, that definitely has connections to the program and the staff that, was interested in it. I heard this just a little bit ago, so this was like a few weeks back. And I mean, nothing has come of that so far. So I don't know if that's, what's going to happen there. So that's why I don't want to speak on it.
Yeah.
I did. And also too, like, I heard it from someone, it's someone I trust, but it was like it wasn't concrete enough for me to say for sure. But I mean, I'll say if it ends up being someone like this person that I heard, then people would be excited about it. The other thing is that though, the one thing with strength and conditioning coaches, much like position coaches, you don't know what you don't know in terms of like who's good and who's not. Like Matt Bayless, you could point to be like, well, why was this guy at UConn? Right? Like there's all this kind of stuff. But then people were like, man, built by Bayless. Oh, what a loss after Bayless. It's very like it's not something that regular people know about. And my cousin was, a strength conditioning coach in the NFL and in college for like basically like 2 decades. So, I'm very aware of like some names that people maybe don't even know of, but there's a bunch of people that are considered like within the industry who are like, man, this is a guy, but he doesn't coach at like, it's not like the guy who's at Georgia or whatever. And I don't know. I mean, Georgia probably has a great guy, but Georgia also gets guys who are 330 and men when they come there. So it's a little bit of a difference.
Yeah. So stay tuned on that, right? We're monitoring that situation. More news. Josh Kelly just ended his visit with Notre Dame. And it sounds like there's a possibility that he's going to go visit Texas Tech. Now, this is pretty simple, right? If he takes the Texas Tech visit, then it's not going to work out, right? Like we talked last time about like Notre Dame does a good job with these guys on their visits. And what if they're taking multiple visits, if you come on this visit, you go on another one, it's just not going to work, right? Like Notre Dame's going to move on. The player has moved on from Notre Dame. Notre Dame wants a commitment on these visits, and if you don't get it, then they're probably just going to move on, and the player knows that, and everyone's moving on from there. So that's something to monitor as well, just whether or not he takes the visit to Texas Tech. On campus now is Riley Leonard. I think that barring something unforeseen, Christian had put an update on the message board yesterday that was very positive for Notre Dame. It would take something the unforeseen that happened in like real time that no one had time to kind of suss out or anything like that. I would look for news on that within the next couple of days. That is the update there. RJ Oben is going to be visiting. Do you know when is it he's visiting, Jamie, the defensive end from Duke?
I don't know if it's Friday, Saturday. It's this weekend.
With this weekend, he's going to be on campus. And that's another situation where tentatively he's scheduled to visit Florida State afterwards. Notre Dame's going to look to get that locked up as well. So stay tuned for news on that. Notre Dame feels good about him. I think he'd be a good fit for Notre Dame as well. Coming from Duke, that's kind of seamless transition in terms of fit and culture and that sort of thing. And then Bo Collins is on campus right now. 1 second, Jamie. I see you want to chime in there.
Yeah. I just saw that it's just on Twitter that another pretty big opt out for Oregon State. So Easton, sorry, I don't want to butcher his name. Easton Mascarenas Arnold, first team All Pac-12, Mike linebacker, 106 tackles this year. He's opting out, or he's not opting out. He is entering the portal. So
entering the portal. Oh wow.
Yeah, so he's entering the portal. So that's on defense for them. That's a freshman corner who started games for them this year and had a couple picks and was like one of their top corners, one of their starting safeties, starting inside linebacker who's all Pac-12, starting tight end who's second team All Pac-12. Both of their top quarterbacks are out. Their stud running back got a DUI, so he's not going to play in the game. And I think that their top wide receiver and maybe their right tackle might be. I mean, we'll see.
I heard they were not going to play.
Yeah. So I think, those are big, those are basically the best players on their team.
Yeah.
Are opting out. And it's not to say, obviously Notre Dame's going to miss some really good players too.
Yeah.
But that would be like X Watts not playing, and he's going to play in the game. So it's a pretty big deal. And Oregon State, I would say, doesn't have the depth that Notre Dame has overall. So it's gonna be interesting to see what their squad looks like.
It's gonna be an interesting situation for sure. So Bo Collins on campus, wide receiver from Clemson. That's gonna be another one we're gonna want to monitor. Stay tuned and keep checking into irisportsdaily.com for updates on that from Matt and or Christian for those guys. Isaac K asked the question, what's going to happen with the kicking situation next year? Mitch Jeter is Mitch Jeter from South Carolina. He was a kicker there. I believe he's going to be on campus as well. He's going to be visiting. I would think that, there's a lot of kickers out there who are available. If you have a kicker coming into your campus, I think that that's a pretty good sign that he's interested. Notre Dame's interested. I would look for that one to get wrapped up as well. So that I would say that's the way to go for Notre Dame there. So Mitch Jeter, we're monitoring that as well. Is that it for news, Jamie? Are we good on the news situation? Any relation to Derek?
I don't know. Who knows?
You get the captain in for the program.
Yeah.
That would be great. So so let's get to the questions. We have some portal questions as well in there too. So, but that's it for the news. And on the topic of depth, Extra ND asks what 12-team playoff teams now play 14, 15, or 16 games they put in the first round. How much more will depth be critical to survive in the many games to win a national championship? O-line needs 7 or 8 players capable of playing, et cetera, et cetera. So the depth, right? Like it's a big deal. And I think you see the depth in throughout the season, being able to play multiple players, not having to go 80 or 90, with your D-line, for example, like we saw a lot in 2015, 2016, 2017, even like you can add, you're servicing your depth throughout the year. Things like, getting Jaden Mickey out there, getting Christian Gray out there, even in spots where it's like, maybe we don't want that, but you want to develop your depth and that sort of thing. So it's going to be a big deal. What do you think, Jamie?
I think it's going to be a huge deal. It's great. It's a great question because it's probably not talked about enough.
Yeah.
I think you look at how Notre Dame ended the season this year, and which is very typical of most years, right? Like, so they lost their starting tight end, obviously late in the year. They lost their starting right guard for the season late in the year, and Zeke Correll got a concussion and missed the last 2 games. And obviously he's in the portal now, but that's the kind of stuff that happens over the course of a year. And when you have all of these games, like obviously the NFL is even more taxing than and then college football. So you just see like there's guys on the injury report, guys who miss time all the time. It's just a much more physical game. Obviously, it's men, right? But I think that for like it becomes like your 85 really got to be like you got to have guys that you can elevate up because that's gonna be a problem. And I even thinking about this because he brings up like even 16 games, right? Why would you want to play in a conference championship game now, if you think about it? Because
it's truly
a disadvantage.
Yeah, truly, yeah.
Because you won the SEC championship, but chances are you're not coming out of that game fully healthy. And so let's say Ohio State this year, right? And they lose the game against Michigan, and they don't play in the Big Ten title game. Well, now they have one less game for their guys to be beat up for before they actually play. And so I guess you don't get the bye. You don't have a chance at a bye. So there's that. But you could lose somebody for the year at that time. Like there's all of these kind of things that can happen with it. So I don't know. I like it's I don't think from that perspective too, Notre Dame kind of being in the 12, like not being in a conference for as long as possible is probably going to be an advantage from the depth perspective and losing players. But it's just going to be key because all of a sudden a guy like say Boubacar Traore, where he's could end up being like a key player for Notre Dame, like down the stretch in a different year, or like Isaiah Foskey in 2019, right? Like, or 2018, sorry, but like 2018, where that all of a sudden, or no, it was 2019, sorry, but 2019, where all of a sudden it's like, man, like we're going to need him because we're down Julian Aquara and we're down Dalen Hayes and, all these things that happen. And it's like, we're going to need him for this time. So instead of like worrying about the 4-game rule, but you might have to get rid of the 4-game rule.
I was just about to say, how do you
have to make it 5 years total?
Yeah. I would say 5 to play 5. Honestly, I would
5 to play 5.
I think that's fair. I think that's
not
fair.
getting a 5 to play 5. I think is fair. Not giving like the 6, because I think actually now as it's become, and I know Notre Dame's benefit from it too, but the 6th year is kind of ridiculous with a lot of guys, and
it's crazy.
Yeah.
But thank you, Kris Mitchell, for coming to Notre Dame.
And JJB and Thomas Harper.
Yeah, that's good. But the rest of it is not so great. Human Robot asks, what do you think the coaches? Why do you think the coaches Freeman has brought up from Cincy have been so successful? Do the Bearcats have a really good selection and mentorship program for assistants? Good.
I mean, I think Luke Fickell is good at identifying coaches. Like that. That is one thing. He's good at knowing which guys are good coaches, and he values that. So I think that's part of it. And as much as you give credit to Marcus Freeman for bringing these guys over, and a lot of these guys are his guys too. But like, I mean, Luke Fickell's ultimately the guy who kind of brought all these guys together. And if you look at even where some of the other guys from previous Cincinnati staffs have gone on to work after they were at Cincinnati, like there's guys, obviously there's a couple DB coaches who are at Ohio State right now that were on Cincinnati staff. Obviously Al Washington's doing well at Notre Dame, but before that, he started out at Cincinnati and then went to Michigan and then went to Ohio State. Like Luke Fickell's, obviously has a talent for evaluating young coaches and then, mentoring them. So I think that's part of it. I think that's certainly a big part of it. And then also too, when you have like there's a culture from that program in terms of how they viewed like evaluation, how they viewed recruiting, and all these things that helped build that program. and what made that program like very, very successful. Because, you know, there was like a string of Cincinnati coaches in a row that really kind of, because it was D'Antonio built it up after, but I believe he took it over from, I can't remember who he took it over from before that, but like, it was like kind of already in a good spot. And then D'Antonio left, and then Brian Kelly came, and then Butch Jones took over. And then the senator from Alabama, Tommy Tuberville, came and went down the toilet. So Fickle kind of had to rebuild it, and he built it up to a really, really good place. And I think, you know, he kind of laid out a blueprint, which is why, like, I would be shocked if it doesn't end up going well for him eventually at Wisconsin. Like, they're going to get it rolling there. You know, and it's not that he's even a dynamic recruiter, but he's a guy that will get the right players, get the right coaches there at Wisconsin, and they're going to be successful.
I mean, we see it in the pros all the time. Like, good programs and good operations beget good results, right? Like, look at the Ravens, you know?
Yeah.
Like, they just, however you bring someone into that building, like they're gonna do well, right? It was true for the Pats for a really long time, right? It's true for like the Spurs, you know, like there are certain operations that just do a good job. And I think Cincinnati is kind of one of those operations. And look, that's why I think it's good that, you know, you tap into that, right? Like, I don't have a problem with, that's so to me, like going after Mike Brown at wide receiver coach. And by the way, there's a really good article that Matt put up on the website, irasportsdaily.com, talking to Michael Young, who was a former Notre Dame player who went to Cincinnati, who was coached by Mike Brown over there. And he had really good things to say about him. I encourage everyone to go read that. And so I don't like when you go in to tap into like the Cincinnati kind of pipeline there. That to me is different than tapping into like the Purdue, West Virginia pipeline with Jared Parker. Now, which isn't to say Jared Parker hasn't worked out. And especially like as he was brought in to be a tight end coach, and I think he's doing a good job there. And I think he's a good recruiter as well. This is a little bit different in terms of, you know, he's offensive coordinator. I don't want to get into the Jared Parker rabbit hole, but just the point is like, I think tapping into Cincinnati is different than tapping into Purdue, West Virginia. That's the point that I'm making there. So yeah, I think that's important for Notre Dame and keeping that pipeline open as well. John Erickson says you guys are on top of everything. Great job. Thank you very much. We try to keep on top of everything and bring it to everybody. And so if you like that, please hit the like button, subscribe to the show, and all those other things. And we're going to keep it rolling here with the next question. Blue Claw asks, would it be possible that Freeman told the wide receiver room that transfers were being brought in? What could have been a factor in the mass exodus? Is Notre Dame using different NIL tactics? This transfer portal players are coming for visits quickly and committing soon thereafter. I know that they definitely 100% told the wide receivers ahead of time, we're going to bring in players from the portal. These players are not dumb. I can't imagine that they would not have seen this coming. They have tried to bring in a portal wide receiver for the last 2 years. Is it a factor? Maybe. Don't believe it to be the driving factor, but I think it was a factor. What do you think about this second question, Jamie, in terms of NIL tactics? Is it different? Do you feel like it's different?
Yeah, I think it's different in that I don't even know NIL tactics. I don't even know if that's like the right way to put it. I don't think that's like, you know,
I think the question is essentially asking, like, is their NIL operation like a lot better than maybe conventional wisdom would say?
I think it's way better than conventional wisdom would say. And I think that Notre Dame players, it's not just Sam Hartman, right? But this isn't something that even when, you know, like Michael Mayer did fine at Notre Dame, guys. Like, you know, guys who are top players and getting guys like Foskey and Patterson to come back to school. Like, that is something that, you know, they were taken care of in an NIL way. And also, you know, you look at, but now how things are structured throughout college football is everybody on the team is getting something. It's not like there's, but it's people who are on the team. And it's not like, promising something to recruits. Like, it's not like signing bonuses. It's like, this is what, people on the team get. And I think they do pretty good. And part of it is like, I think people know that part of the thing with Fund is that they do these charitable things. And that's why these Notre Dame players are out there doing charitable things and stuff. I mean, obviously they're doing it. It's for a good cause, and that's great. But also that's part of their package of what they're getting. And I think they have a good plan with it. So that's why, like, you see some of these guys, you're like, man, why would this be? It's because, like, they're doing all right. They're doing all right. And it's not to say that Notre Dame, I don't know, I don't think they'd ever get in like a straight up bidding war with someone. That's just not what they would do. But I think they, lay it out like, this is what we have here. This is the kind of thing that is set up from Fund or whoever or whatever. Like, and then it's a good setup. And then plus, they also, do a good job of just straight up recruiting and showing like exactly like, this is how we're going to develop you. This is how you're going to fit into the defense. This is how you're going to fit into the offense. Like, all that kind of stuff. They do a really good job of that.
I know someone who is involved in the NIL space with a SEC school. And so we talk a lot about, that or whatever. And just, he knows the NIL world then because he's involved. And he's heard throughout the year, like, NIL's operation, or I'm sorry, Notre Dame's NIL operation is like legit for players on the team and for like players income, like not high school, basically. Like, Notre Dame is pretty clear. Like, we're not going to pay acquisition fees for high school players, like, period. Like, that's not going to be a thing that they do. But for the players on the team, for players that are incoming, who are kind of proven college players, I mean, Sam Hartman did very, very well. And I think that's the word's kind of coming out on that. I think guys like Ben Morrison, Joe Alt, Blake Fisher, Audric Estime, like, these guys do a really good job in that space. And I think that, that's kind of what the Notre Dame mission there has been. Like, our players and the proven players in college, like, they're going to be taken care of the way that that a school like Notre Dame should be able to do so. And they have, right? So, so complaints on that end, the fears that Notre Dame was falling behind and this, that, and the other, I think I don't have those fears anymore. I don't have those concerns. I do think Notre Dame has they're not going to get into an all-out bidding war for a guy. Like, they have a package for you, and it's like, if you don't want it, and if you're going to go like just looking for more money and then try to come back to Notre Dame, it's like, well, this is what they're offering. Like, that may be like, nah, like, go take it. Like, that's not what it is. Like, Notre Dame's not going to operate that way, but they definitely have a much more robust NIL operation with Fund than they had previously. I can pretty confident in saying that. Next question from Barney M. Hartman was a master of the back shoulder throw at Wake. What happened to that this year? I think we kind of got into that earlier. Like, just didn't have confidence that there was a player on the roster that could complete that. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a big thing. And that's also something that's just developed over time with trust. And so maybe Jaden Thomas, because we saw it in camp, right? And actually they did pretty well with it with Jaden Thomas, where he made plays on Notre Dame's corners, pretty good corners, right? So he would make some plays with it. And so some of it might have been like, hey, it's going to come at some point. And then Jaden Thomas got hurt and it just like never came because he didn't really have anybody else.
Yeah.
So I think that's got a lot to do with it. Like, those receivers that he played with at Wake, he played with for years. and like they, you know, were working on it in practice. The other thing is that at Wake, they're throwing a million 50-50 balls. And that's not the offense at Notre Dame. First of all, they didn't have the personnel to do that, but also that wasn't the offense. And it's also why one of the reasons why, like, you know, Notre Dame had a lot more yards after the catch than guys at Wake, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. So it's just lack of personnel, right? That's pretty clearly, I think, what it was there. ND Mike 23, can you give any color on how these transfers in happen? Do we have a few analysts looking for talent all year? Do we initiate contact or do we wait for calls from agents? Do we actually talk to agents? And if not, who does? I would like to understand how the mechanics work. I'm going to let you have a go at this one first.
Yeah, so they do have guys who do, that's their job, right? Is they have people within their personnel and scouting department, right? Like who, that's a big part of their job, is looking at guys, scouting players within college football throughout the year. Like obviously that's something like Butler Benton, who is, you know, heads up the personnel for Notre Dame. That's a big thing with him. Matt Jansen, who, you know, is a guy who was hired for scouting. He is very heavily involved in that, in evaluating players, not only just for like scouting other teams, but like scouting these players that Notre Dame might target in the portal, right? So all that kind of stuff. And I mean, there's a bunch of other, obviously they probably have like interns and a bunch of other guys, and other recruiting guys are on it too. So there are guys who maybe their more primary focus are like high school recruits, and then there's other guys who are more kind of focused on this, and then some guys who are on both. But it's definitely something that they are looking at all the time, and that's everyone. And you have to be like that, because you can't someone can't just enter the portal and you can't be like, all right, guys, we got to study like these 600 names tonight. Like that's just not going to cut it. And there might be someone who pops up, like whatever, it happens, right? Like there's someone pops up that you didn't expect to enter the portal, but that you maybe didn't know about from like some small school or whatever. Like that happens all the time. That happens all the time in the NFL draft, right? People slip through the cracks, but it's doing the best job of like being thorough and finding these guys. And that, you know, that helps a lot. And that's also like finding the guys who are the right fit and knowing that. And a lot of it is, like, I mean, agents is strong. I don't think it's like an agents thing. It's like, but they're definitely like, there's back channeling going on all the time in college football, all the time with head coach, like high school head coaches, high school position coaches, trainers, parents, other like, you know, people that are involved in people's lives. Like it's a thing. It's definitely a thing, but a lot of that is from relationships that started in recruiting. And sometimes it's the players who reach out, like, you know, people who represent the players that reach out. And sometimes it's the other way around.
Okay. The other part too is like these players, like Kris Mitchell, right? Like he knows pretty soon, early in his season, like I'm going to be looking around, right? He had better have someone contacting schools who are like, he's interested in, like, hey, this guy, he's probably going to be into the portal, so they can scout him, right? Like they have to let them know that. Like Josh Kelly, same. Like Bo Collins, same, right? Like Bo Collins is different because, you know, that like, for example, Notre Dame, like they play Bo Collins. They played him a couple times, right? Like they've scouted him on a number of occasions. Same thing with Riley Leonard. It was no secret that Notre Dame was probably going to go into a portal for a quarterback. It was no secret that Notre Dame was going to look to wide receiver in the portal, right? If you're a player who wants to go into the portal, you're going to find Notre Dame. You're going to find schools. Like you can definitely, like a lot of these positions, I'll bet you don't even need to do that, right? And And so, it's kind of obvious. Like, we can all sit here, like we talk about this in November, October, whenever it may be. What do you think Notre Dame's going to need in the portal? We'll have that conversation, right? People can have the same conversation. They can, and people who are thinking about going to the portal. So it's like you can back channel for sure, but I wouldn't be surprised if the back channeling started on the other end, on like the player end, because they know, right? They know more than anyone who wants to go in. They want to go in. So I would say on that front as well.
Great, great point about that, because the players are definitely, because the other thing is, like, Kris Mitchell isn't going in and doesn't want to be a surprise, because maybe people won't evaluate him and then they won't give him a shot. He wants everyone to see him and know that he might go in, so then he'll have a chance to go to a place like Notre Dame, rather than being like, okay, well, Wake Forest needs somebody, and I mean, no shots at Wake Forest, but shots at Wake Forest. Like, it's not a place that someone is thinking about, like, it's not first on the list for people, right? So I think there's that. And the other thing is, it's like a total, like, you have to evaluate your roster year round. So you're looking at every, like, all of these, like, bowl practices, they're looking at it and they're deciding right now, like, oh, this guy, he is going to be a player for us next year, right? Or this guy is going to really need a big, winter, spring in the weight room. He's going to need this in order to be able to play at a certain level. Or this guy isn't there yet, or this guy, man, I don't know if this guy's ever going to play. All that kind of stuff happens all year round, where they're looking at that. And then plus injuries happen, right? So then they have to, look at it. And then also too, you have to have an idea of which guys might transfer, which guys might leave for the NFL, all of that stuff. So even though they're kind of finalizing those things, like, so during the bye weeks, Marcus Freeman said, like, oh yeah, we're talking about, they talk to them and they have those frank, honest conversations about that kind of stuff. And they do it then, the coaching staff already know. They have ideas on that for months and months about all that kind of stuff. And then sometimes stuff changes, because, like, obviously, like, Xavier Watts was not a guy that they were thinking, all of a sudden the guy, wins the friggin' Bronco Nagurski award, right? And you're like, wow, okay, now we might not have X Watts. Like, it just, that changes, right? So
yeah. Irish Bronx asks, any sense on what Mills and Cross will do? I believe Cross will stay, and then to be determined on Mills. You haven't heard anything about that?
Haven't heard anything more on it, but that's kind of what I've heard as well. So we'll see. But I think that no news is good news for both of them, I would say. For Notre Dame.
Agree. Can you frame the position by position linebacker competition for 2024? Who do you see competing and where? We expect that, we know Leofau won't be on the roster next year, and we expect JD Bertrand will not as well. I would expect Kaiser to be on the roster. I could see him playing Mike. Will would be, who do you see playing the Will? You could see Jaden Osbury play there. You could see Jalen Sneed play there. I could see Drake Bowen at the Mike, maybe splitting time with Kaiser. And then Rover / nickel, right? There's Preston Zinter, who's sitting there as well. What's Nolan Ziegler going to do? What's his situation going to be? So how do you see that falling, Jamie?
And obviously they're getting the freshmen coming in too, right?
Yes, of course. KVA. Yeah.
KVA, who I think is going to be in the kind of grooming him into the kind of Leofau type of role. I would say that is, that hybrid type. I think that is probably the most likely for him. And then, Cahoon and obviously Rizak he's light right now. Like he's going to have to do a lot of, physical development. He can really, really run. But he's a rover type right now. But it's like weird, because it's like, I mean, Rover is just not a base position anymore. Not just for Notre Dame. It's just it's not in college football, because too many teams they'll just kill you throwing the ball if you play with 3 linebackers out all the time. Like, it's just nickel defense is base defense now, right? And whether that nickel defender is a safety, because sometimes it could be in safety, right? Or a pure corner type, or like a hybrid type, whatever, having that Rover, unless it's just like a total freak, like a JOK. And even JOK might have just been like, okay, we're going to try to force feed you into, developing it as a will right now. Right. So, I don't know. I mean, to me, it's going to be interesting of how they kind of shuffle it around. Because I think, like, it'll be, my guess is Bowen and Kaiser will compete for Mike, for the mic, and then whatever happens there happens. And then, Osbury, Sneed certainly at will, but like you said, it could be for Bowen at will. Zinter, I mean, I don't want to count him out or anything like that too. Like, see if he can admit. I just don't know about, I think it's just with Nolan Ziegler, it's too early to kind of know. Like
where he's at.
Future.
What
his future holds in football and everything, and at Notre Dame. So, we'll see. And I mean, out of the young guys, KVA is the only guy that I would expect to compete for playing time early.
Big time player. Patty D7. Do you see Golden staying long term, as in another 3 to 5 years? I think 1 more year would be a blessing. I can't imagine him being. I mean, he may not. He may get a job offer this year and not be around. I can't imagine anything beyond next season. What do you think?
I guess that I think 1 year is probably about what you would get. 3 to 5 seems very slim.
Like, I don't know that I could name a coach who I would say 3 to 5. I don't think there's one coach, and that might even include Marcus Freeman. Like, he might be the only one. Every other coach, none of the coaches who aren't Marcus Freeman, I would say, would be around in 3 to 5 years. It's just not how it works, right? It just doesn't usually work that way. Silverback, what type of game plan do you foresee Parker implementing down in El Paso without the services of Hartman, Estime, Alt, Fisher, etc.? I mean, I would the same as it's been. I don't think it's specific to any of those guys. The only thing I could see is a lot more quick game, because you don't have the tackles.
Yeah.
A lot more quick game, a lot more RPO stuff, a lot more, free access, taking free access whenever you can. Maybe some more play action, some rollouts, like trying to get Angeli out of the pocket, things like that to protect the offensive line. The run game, I think, would pretty much stay the same, but a lot more quick game in the passing game, especially because you don't have your deep threat. Like, you don't have Tobias out there either. You don't have Flores. So I would say that's what I would expect to see. Anything else on that, Jamie?
No.
We're good. All right, moving on. CB Iris says, feeling on who from the portal will possibly commit.
I mean, I think we kind of already talked about that. So, like, it's, if they're taking visits, they're the guys to watch.
They're the guys to watch.
Yeah.
I would say the heads up on Riley Leonard. That's what I would say.
Out of the immediate,
I would look for something on Riley Leonard. He's probably putting something together. And if you want to put something together, some sort of video or some sort of online, some graphic or whatever, and you don't have, Hayes Fawcett on the speed dial, then you're going to want to head up VSR Media, which was founded by Notre Dame football pregame host and Emmy Award-winning anchor Vahid Sadrazadeh. VSR Media provides professional and cinematic video and photo Whether you're looking for a collegiate or pro level highlight reel, have a personal story to tell, or are aiming to diversify and grow your business, VSR Media specializes in short and long form video storytelling, social media management, and website design. VSR Media also captures professional headshots, senior, and sports photos. Contact them at vsrmediacompany.com. Mention Irish Sports Daily to receive 20% off your first project. Visit them online or give them a call at 574-800-9106. Next question from, I have to blow this up. Hard to read. NRB7VC. Have you heard any chatter about how Fun is operating now versus last recruiting transfers? Goes on to talk about unwillingness to pay acquisition fees. Seems like Fun has really got his act together. We definitely talked about that in length. So I knew this question was coming, so I wanted to go ahead and answer those questions and get to that as well. Anything on this, Jamie, that you want to?
No, I mean, I haven't heard anything that's like way different. And the other thing is like, I think purposely we don't really know how it all, we're never going to know exactly.
Yeah. I don't want Jamie, if you got to go, then I can finish out the questions. It's up.
I'll do two more and then I got to roll. So.
Okay, no problem. Jamie's got some kid stuff he's got to do, but I'll finish up the questions. Sweet Lou 88. Do you guys think Michigan will win the national championship? Why or why not?
I don't think they're going to win. I think they're going to lose to Bama. I think it's a matchup thing. It's like you can bully all these teams in the Big Ten, and you can't bully Alabama. And I mean, JJ McCarthy has kind of yet to show that he's like, though he played good enough to beat, Ohio State. I mean, I think Jalen Milroe and, what they could do on offense is better than Cal McCord, even with Marvin Harrison, right? Like, so I think that's ultimately going to be the difference. And they're just also more explosive. Michigan is an explosive offense, and teams that aren't explosive enough don't win in these situations. It's impossible to have grinded out 10-play drives over and over again. You just can't do it.
Look, the last 4 games for Michigan on offense have been not good. They're averaging 282 yards a game of offense in the last 4. They had 213 yards against and 3.3 yards per play against Iowa. Look, I know Iowa's good defense. That's the 3rd worst performance by any offense that Iowa played this year. They have not played well. They did not play well against Penn State. They did not play well against Maryland offensively. Their best game was against Ohio State when they had 338 yards. And so I just that's kind of lurking here, like lost in all of the cheating stuff, which should have been disqualifying, but whatever. Lost in all of that is, everyone just kind of like said they're this dominant team, they're a great team, like they're SP plus, all that looks great. They have not played well offensively in like over a month. So I just think that they're not playing very well right now. So no, I don't think they will. I absolutely don't think that they will win the national championship because of that. Frankly, if they got Washington, I think they'd have a good chance. I think if they get Texas, they'll lose. But I think they could very well lose to Bama, just like you say. ND111988. I'm coming around to the idea that one of the biggest advantages an elite Power 5 program could have right now is a GM who provides continuity and roster management beyond a single coaching cycle, keeps the boosters aligned, manages the NIL, performs long-term planning. Any idea if any teams are doing this? I know a lot of coaches. I mean, a lot of other programs are doing this. Notre Dame, they have Benton, right?
Yeah, Butler Benton. I don't think anyone's doing that where the GM is the head, because essentially you're saying the GM was the head of the program. Yeah. And no one's doing that. The coach is ultimately, even though other guys are general managers, it's like the coach is like the president and CEO of the program, really, right? So And I don't see that changing because those guys are getting paid like, $10 million at the top level, right? So it's like they're not going to pay the GMs that much. So that's just not where they're at. And I don't see that ever being a thing. Maybe at a lower level school, I could see where it's like, okay, we're always going to cycle through and we're going to have this guy here. Right.
Yeah.
So that's the way that, that's the only way that I could see it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, yeah, I better get going, but
all right, Jamie, I'll talk to you.
We've
only got a few questions here. We've only got a few more questions. We'll get to that. Can the wide receivers actually be better in 2024? I believe so. This is from ND Mac. Also, Irish have a good chance to make the top 12 next year. Yes. On the top 12, I would say yes, definitely. They do not have a tough schedule next year. You open with Texas A&M. You have Florida State. Notre Dame should be able to manage those. It's just the schedule sets up very well for Notre Dame in 2012 or 2024 to make the top 12. Can the Irish receivers be better in 2024? Listen, they would have been better if they brought in no one in the portal and everyone just stayed. Like that team, they all had young guys. They were all going to get better. And so I think with the losses, bringing in a guy like Kris Mitchell automatically upgrades the room. He would have been the best receiver on the team last year. Jaden Thomas hopefully gets healthy. Jaden Greathouse gets a year older. Jordan Faison gets a year older, right? Deion Colsey's coming back. KK Smith adds to the roster, right? And then you bring in the freshman receivers in Cam Williams and Micah Gilbert and Logan Saldate. Like those guys are going to be early enrollees as well. So I just think that those guys would have enhanced the room. You already have Kris Mitchell in fold. I think they'll probably land one of Collins and or Kelly, and in which case it's 100% a better roster than they had last year. So that's what I would look for there. Drew Brennan asked portal questions. Do you get the sense that along with Jordan Clark as the nickel that the Irish will be going after another safety to hopefully pair with Xavier Watts? Any names to watch? The player from the people were asking about it in the chat. The player from Purdue, their freshman safety, that seems to be something to be monitoring. I think there's been some social media follows there. And so that's something to monitor if he pops into the portal. I know that Oregon State had a safety that just went into the portal as well. And I think that USC might be after him. So that might be the betting favorite there. But I do think that they're going to want to hit the portal for a safety to play, hopefully next to Xavier Watts. If Xavier Watts was to decide to go to the NFL, they would 100% have to go to the portal there. You would only have a Don Schuler. You would only have Ben Minnick, Luke Talich, and so the freshman as well. So you don't want that to be the situation. You're going to want to bring in a veteran there. So I would look for movement on the safety situation for Notre Dame. So those, the Oregon State player and then maybe the Purdue player with some social media follows as well. Karlik asks, why should any, I believe this is the last question as well. Why should any competitive Power 5 school why should any competitive high school quarterback to go to a Power 5 school out of high school? Right. So basically the question is asking, you're looking at Steve Angeli, like you go to Notre Dame. When are you ever going to get a chance to prove you can actually play football? Right. You go to Notre Dame. Steve Angeli played a little bit for Notre Dame, never actually starts. If they bring in Riley Leonard, he decides to transfer. He's been in college for 2 years, never got to start a game. And it's just like, would it have been better for him to go somewhere and play and show that he can be a big time player, and then he could transfer into somewhere after 2 years instead of transferring out of somewhere, if that makes sense. It's interesting, right? And I think Notre Dame, it's an interesting philosophical question, and Jamie and I have talked about it a bunch. Like, when are you going to get out of this 1 year thing, right? Because you could have seen on Steve Angeli if Sam Hartman gets hurt, but you're basically asking for an injury, right? And you don't want that, right? Like, you don't want to hope for injury to one of your teammates in that kind of situation. You want to be able to play on your own terms, right? You want to be able to go win a job. Like, how could Steve Angeli beat out Sam Hartman? How can Steve Angeli or Kenny Minchie or CJ Carr actually beat out Riley Leonard, right? It's just not reasonable to think that they could, right? Especially when you consider the financial investment of those players and what the school will put into those guys, right? Like we said, Sam Hartman, he was very well compensated. And so there's a financial incentive for him to be on the football field for Notre Dame. How are those guys going to break through there? What I will say is everything that I've heard about how Notre Dame feels about Kenny Minchie specifically. I know they like Steve Angeli, but I know they really like Kenny Minchie and what he has. I would not be shocked if Riley Leonard played out this year and then Kenny Minchie kind of was groomed to be the guy. That's a feeling that I have on that. So if it doesn't happen with those guys, then it's a great question. I don't know how you could ever really count on it. It would just be very, very difficult if Notre Dame took another portal quarterback after Riley Leonard. That's just where I'm at on that. So I think that's the end of the questions. I may be wrong. I am wrong. Any updates on the search for strength and conditioning? We already talked about that. And there's one more thing. Zalezo VLK. Obviously, no one can supplant Kyle Hamilton and Greg's heart, but is there a separate Xavier Watts fan club for which Greg is now president? No, the Kyle Hamilton thing was completely organic and out of nowhere, the way that it happened. And I actually have a funny story about that. So so a couple weeks ago, I guess now, on Thanksgiving weekend, the Ravens played in LA, and I've kind of alluded to it on earlier shows before, but I have a personal relationship with the Kyle Hamilton family, his parents and his brother. So went to the game. We hooked up with them after the game. His mom arranged for us to go down. When I say us, I mean me and my daughter and my son and my nephew. My nephew is a big Kyle Hamilton guy. And she arranged for us to go down under the stadium and meet Kyle after the game. And so he met with us, and it was great and very, very nice. My son was on the shoulders of his brother. And, Kyle met with us for a few minutes, spoke to us, spoke to my nephew, spoke to my son and my daughter. And it was great. And he's awesome and truly. And so, and it's a very cool thing that happens. And my daughter loves Taylor Swift. And so she has it in her mind that she is going to basically start a Twitter page and start writing about Kyle Hamilton. Cause she asked me like, how do you know him? Like, how did you get to meet him? And I kind of told her, like, when I blogged for UHND, like I wrote a bunch of articles about Kyle Hamilton, and his parents noticed it, and it kind of bloomed from there. So she just has decided that she is going to start a Twitter page and write about Taylor Swift, and Taylor Swift's like parents will see it, and she will get to meet Taylor Swift. And I'm having a hard time kind of explaining, like, it doesn't work like that. Like, Taylor Swift is one of the most famous people in the world. It's just not going to go that way. She has written a letter to Santa, and Santa's job is to give the letter to Taylor Swift. I don't know how that's going to work out. I don't know what's going to happen there. So we're in a bit of a pickle. But that's the thing with Kyle Hamilton. I feel an affinity for Xavier Watts because of the safety thing, and I'm very heartened to see him kind of blossom as he has as a player, because he's worked so hard, and it's truly just through his determination and through his hard work and his desire to stick it out as a Notre Dame football player. And as a college football player, that he has risen to the heights that he has to win the Defensive Player of the Year award. It truly could not, in my opinion, it truly could not have happened to a better player and a better person. It's great to see. The Kyle Hamilton thing is, it won't be replaced. It was something that just kind of happened organically, and it's very cool. But congratulations to Xavier Watts for his all of his success. It's very awesome to see for him and his family. And actually know his dad a little bit, and I'm always congratulating him on all of his success as well. So thank you everyone for tuning in. We're going to end it there. You're going to want to stay locked in because there could be a great there could be a, I don't want to say great. There could be a live show if there's a Riley Leonard announcement sometime when I'm around and when Jamie's around. It's kind of tough. Like if he does it later in the day, I've got kids responsibilities and Jamie's got kid responsibilities. Can't just leave my kids somewhere and strike up a live show. But we've got some stuff waiting, some content waiting for you. Should Riley Leonard, I've got a breakdown ready to go, like some film breakdown stuff. So you're going to want to check that out. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit the like button, please. Hit the notification bell so you know whatever it is we're going live or we're releasing a video. Check out irishsportsdaily.com for all your updates on everything with respect to Joshua Kelly or Bo Collins or Riley Leonard or RJ Oben, et cetera, et cetera. There's going to be a lot of information on irishsportsdaily.com. Thank you everyone for tuning in. We'll talk to you soon. Keep hitting and hustling.